Hey there, this is Emily Waiwu, producer of Waste Not, Why Not, and a co-founder at Ghost Island Media that's bringing you this podcast. I just want to say thank you so much for your support. We're working hard on making the second half of the season for you, and we'll be hosting a live Waste Not, Why Not event at the end of August in Taipei. So look out for announcements on where, when, and who we'll be featuring. And now, some words about our sponsor for this episode. Summer is here. It's time for a vacation. Maybe you live in Taiwan or are looking to travel to Taiwan. And you know what they say, planning is half the fun, right? I love looking at logistics and going through 20 pages of Airbnb and sorting through the top 10 lists of the top 10 list of where to go. Exciting, right? No, you just don't have the time. So look for a One Taiwan, WAN Taiwan, for a hand-picked, customized itinerary for you in English. Here's what you do. You tell them what you're looking for, they give you a set of recommendations, you decide on the recommendations because you trust them, and they do the rest, including booking and confirming everything. All you need to do is show up for your trip and enjoy. One Taiwan, WAN Taiwan, is offering 10% off for Waste Not, Why Not listeners with the code WASTENOT. So that's WAN-TaiwanTravel.com. Again, WAN-TaiwanTravel.com and the code WASTENOT. I use them too. They do the planning, so I can use my time making podcasts. Okay, now welcome to the 6th episode. Things are going to sound a little different today. This is part 2 of our series on electric vehicles. And today, Nate has a conversation with the head engineer at an EV company that's pioneered electric vehicle infrastructures. You might remember him from part 1, Are Electric Vehicles Environmental? Now, it's not necessary to hear the 2 parts in sequence, but it's helpful. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Nature Nate, and this is Waste Not, Why Not, a podcast where we talk about how not to save the environment. I'm an environmental researcher based in Taiwan, working on energy, ocean, and waste issues. Electric vehicles that run on dirty grids already emit less emissions than combustion engines. The cost of an EV is getting cheaper, the range is getting longer, and the batteries are getting better. Commitments made by countries and cities on zero-emission policies have also propelled this global momentum for electric vehicles. The hope is that a total ban on combustion engines would help reduce air pollution, oil consumption, and greenhouse gases. But one thing that doesn't get talked about enough in this conversation is light EVs, including electric scooters and motorcycles. One study suggests that light EVs will become a $23 billion market by 2025, with much of that growth happening in rising economies. So let's actually talk about this really important thing that no one ever talks about. In 2015, a startup called Gogoro came out of stealth mode and brought its first light EV to CES, the mecca of consumer electronic conventions. It was an electric motorcycle called Smart Scooter 1. It was extremely light at just 95 kilograms. It took 2 rechargeable batteries and had a maximum speed of 95 kilometers per hour. The Smart Scooter 1, not related to the EV1 from episode 1, connected to your iOS or Android, and you could even personalize the lights and sounds. It was also beautifully designed. Forbes described it as something like what you would get if you mated a Vespa and an iPhone. While the sleekness was exciting, I don't really care about that. What I found initially exciting was that Gogoro was not just a scooter, it was a battery infrastructure. They were creating a network of battery swapping stations so their riders don't have to charge their vehicles. This was something no one had ever attempted for scooters, and for cars, many had failed. They call their swapping spots Go stations, and they sort of look like if Apple designed a vending machine. Here's how it works. You arrive at a Go station, you pull out a battery from your Gogoro. The battery is about the size of a loaf of bread, but it weighs 9 kilograms. And you swap it for a new battery that's been charged inside the battery dispenser. And off you go, all in under a minute. No, seriously, I've timed it because I wanted to compare how long it takes to recharge versus refuel. In 2017, Gogoro closed a $300 million round of funding, putting the company's total value to $800 million US. Its investors included Generation, which is Al Gore's sustainable investment management firm. And King Gore of Climate actually visited them himself. Gogoro is from Taiwan, a country with over 12 million scooters and motorcycles on the road. Today, there are more than 1,200 battery swapping stations around the island, one per every kilometer. Gogoro plans on outfitting some of the world's most dense and polluted cities in the world with a network of these swappable batteries. This is going to be the future. The Verge called it outrageous and ridiculously ambitious. Today we speak to Daniel Vickery, head engineer of the Gogoro battery swapping system. We nerd out on the production and potentials of lithium-ion batteries, his dreams of living in an ultra-quiet city without the sound of combustion engines, and how he went from making circuit boards at MIT to making toys in Hong Kong. I really enjoyed talking with Daniel, and I think you guys will like it as well.
Hey, my name is Daniel Vickery, and I lead the engineering effort at a company called Gogoro for batteries and battery charging systems.
Okay, Daniel, so I know about Gogoro. I've even ridden one, but for someone who's never been to Taiwan, how would you describe a Gogoro?
So yeah, if you haven't been to Taiwan, you have to imagine this is a place that is so dense. Everyone is living in multi-story apartment buildings. They're parking on the street. And actually, most people ride two-wheel vehicles. In Taiwan, there's almost as many scooters as there are people. The scooter in Taiwan is the same as a car in the US. It's just how you get to where you're going to work. It's how you get to where you're going to play. And in this kind of space where there's millions, literally millions of scooters in a city, how are you going to charge them all? What is the gas station of the future going to look like? So what Gogoro is we have an electric scooter that's very cool, but we also have a new way of getting energy to the scooter, which is we swap the battery instead of just charging it. So we have battery swapping vending machines. And these stations are sprinkled all over about every 500 meters in the city. And we've already covered the whole country, really. So about 80% of people in Taiwan live within 1 or 2 kilometers of one of these battery swapping stations. It's literally the first of its kind. It's the only country in the world to be completely covered by a battery swapping network.
Taiwan #1 in battery swapping networks.
It's an example for the world.
And
I'm very proud of it.
Where are these stations? Where do you put them? And how would I find them if I was running out of juice?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the easiest way to find them is you open our app and you'll just show you a map of the nearest station. Of course, most people, after a couple of weeks, they already get familiar with all the stations nearby are. But I want to add one thing here is that the station, it's not like you imagine like a gas station to be, which is this big place you pull up. There's kind of some mediocre convenience store, some smelly bathrooms. This is more on the scale of a candy machine or a Coke machine. And to be honest, it's about as cheap and about as simple to build as one of these kind of Coke machines. So we try to put them all over the place. We have it in a 7-Eleven, the convenience store, supermarket, parking garage, the metro station for the subway here in Taiwan, even a park or maybe at a cafe. And so it's very easily integrated into your life. This also enables Gogoro to deploy these very fast. We can take an existing city and transform it to be electric without pulling a bunch of building permits to do any construction or anything like that.
And how is there a screen? How do you pay for the batteries?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you more about that. Actually, you don't need to have anything like an ID, a smartphone, a card, or anything. You just take your battery, you put it in, and it will give you some fresh ones. And the reason is because this is all it's all Internet of Things. It's all smart. The battery has a computer inside. It knows who it belongs to. So when you put your battery into the station, it will check to see that, you've paid your bill on a monthly basis and everything's good, and it will give you 2 new batteries assigned to you. So how do you pay? What we do is kind of like a cell phone plan. You pay it based on a monthly basis, and you pay a flat fee, just like you would for a cell phone, and you get a certain number of kilometers you can drive. And if you go over that number, you start to pay per kilometer after that. So just like a cell phone, you might pay for 500 minutes, and then every minute after that might cost a small amount of money. So in this sense, Gogoro is really like 2 businesses. One business is the more traditional one, which is, selling the scooter, making some money from that. But the second one is actually selling this kind of battery service or energy service. And that's kind of a whole new business model that's very exciting. This allows the consumer to actually own the part of the system that's really fun, the electric vehicle, and the battery. You no longer need to worry about it running out of capacity or, some kind of damage or warranty or anything. All you know is you have a freshly charged battery ready for you whenever you need it.
So does the Gogoro make any sound?
The Gogoro makes a very cool sound, a very electric, futuristic sound. There's no vibration or bum ba dum 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 kind of engine turning over noises. There's no exhaust. The original Gogoro actually it has its kind of own sound. We designed the aluminum chassis to be kind of like an instrument, really. And we use the sounds from the motor and we echo them inside the aluminum chassis. The future scooters also, we have some built-in sounds that a speaker produces because the government requires that of us. But it's very electric. It's much quieter, especially when you're going slower. Yeah.
So electric vehicles are so quiet, you have to have a speaker so people know they're coming.
Yeah. And a lot of people, you've heard, some people will complain about this, but I would say, that's my dream. Imagine a future where the streets are quiet. I know it's hard. Nature Nate.
But I can't imagine it.
Imagine a scooter where instead of driving a big 2-ton piece of metal to work, we've got all kinds of small light electric vehicles. We've got bikes, we've got skateboards, we've got our feet, we got scooters. We can drive on much smaller roads with trees. This can be our future. And I have to say, this is really what Gogoro is all about. It's not just about building a cool electric vehicle. It's about the whole infrastructure around it.
Do you have any sense of how that environmental impact compares? How does the Gogoro compare to a conventional combustion scooter?
Yeah, well, typical internal combustion engine, this is the engine inside any kind of gas-powered vehicle, it is actually really inefficient. And that's even more inefficient than, say, the gas power turbine you'd find in a power plant that produces electricity from oil or from gas. And that's because it's really designed to be small and portable inside your car or your scooter. And it's also designed to be cheap so that you can buy it, you can own it. And so, the efficiency of a engine in a scooter might be less than 20%, meaning less than 20% of all the energy stored in the gasoline is going to be just turned into heat. Whereas an electric motor could be a very, very high efficiency, 80%, 90%. So ultimately, even given that you are generating electricity using gasoline or some other kind of fossil fuel, you're transmitting it over power lines, you're using it to charge lithium-ion battery, despite all the losses in that process, a Gogoro scooter or any electric scooter is probably going to be about 4 times more efficient than a gas scooter. A simple way to think about it is if I take a gallon of gasoline and I put it in a gas scooter, I might get 33 kilometers. But if I take that same liter of gasoline and I put it in a gas-powered turbine in a power plant, and then I use all the energy to charge a battery and power an electric scooter, that electric scooter, instead of 33 kilometers, will probably get something like 125 kilometers. Yeah,
so you're
it's a huge
saying
difference.
even when we use fossil fuels to power an electric vehicle, it's still going to be more efficient than a combustion engine?
Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of ways people can spin this because you can compare different kinds of fossil fuels and things like that. Geographies where the grid is different, but ultimately, at the end of the day, in almost all cases, if you're switching from a fossil fuel powered vehicle to an electric vehicle, you're almost always more efficient. You're generally saving carbon emissions.
What's a battery, Daniel? How does an electric vehicle really work? What is a lithium-ion battery? Is it just like a block of lithium?
Yeah, actually, there's not that much lithium in lithium-ion batteries. If someone were to if we had the chance to rename them, we should call them like nickel, cobalt batteries or something like that, because the actual content of lithium is not that high. You might see in the commodities markets, lithium has spiked and had lots of valleys as well in terms of its price over time. And that's because people hear the word lithium and lithium batteries and they're like, ooh, I'm going to go short that, or I'm going to invest in that. But the truth is actually the world's supply of lithium is virtually unlimited. The crust abundance of lithium is it's really no problem for supplying lithium batteries to all over the world.
So we're not going to run out of lithium.
No,
Lithium's not the new white gold.
No, absolutely. We are not close to running out of lithium. Now, as we need more electric vehicle batteries, though, people are opening new lithium mines. But the earth crust abundance of the material is not a limiting factor.
But for something like nickel and cobalt, that might be more challenging?
No, for nickel, aluminum, copper, there are already so many uses for these materials that lithium batteries will not make up a really huge fraction of the total worldwide demand for the materials. Also means that it won't affect the price of the materials that much. The one thing that actually has been a bit of a hang-up, though, is cobalt. A very large fraction of all of the cobalt used in the world today is just dedicated only to lithium-ion batteries. And most of the cobalt produced in the world today is mined in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So there's a lot of problems there with political situation, artisanal mining or child labor and stuff like that have given lithium-ion battery materials and batteries a bad rap.
And when you say artisanal mining, that's not like an artisanal cheese, right?
No, that's not like your...
That's like you and some buddies just go start ripping up the earth and it's not done in a regulated way.
Correct. This is not like, sun-dried tomatoes and manchego.
There's no artisanal mining in Brooklyn.
No, artisanal mining means basically you're having people who don't have any experience to mine that are basically mining with their hands or very simple tools. It maybe could be some very simple family business or something like this. And there's definitely no concern for either workers' health or the environment in the process. That has been a problem in the past. But what I can say is that this is something that is already kind of being solved. A lot of the big, not just battery makers in the world, but big tech companies, like Apple is a great example, who really depend on lithium-ion batteries, are investing in dedicated mines to be able to source cobalt or other ingredients for lithium-ion batteries. And these new facilities are really being done with a sufficient level of oversight so that these problems are not happening.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
And going back to batteries, I understand that Gogoro's battery is a little different. Could you tell me about the design of that battery? And how long do these batteries last? What happens when a Gogoro battery has reached the end of its life? So because it sounds like you're taking ownership and responsibility for the whole battery supply chain.
Absolutely.
So that means that you guys also have to bear the cost of disposal.
That's absolutely right.
So what happens? I assume you're not just going to throw away a computer inside of a battery filled with precious metals.
Absolutely not. You raise a good point, which is that since Gogoro actually owns all of these batteries, it's very easy for us to collect them back. At some point, yes, they will no longer be able to provide power to vehicles. They'll wear out. And at that time, we recycle them. A lot of people talk about, is lithium-ion battery recyclable? I can say with confidence that it is, and that today we don't actually have any batteries that die because they've reached the end of their life. They'll probably last a very long time. But we do have some batteries that, for example, we need to do some tests, or maybe they have some defects. And every single one we recycle. We never landfill any battery. And there are actually quite a number of very professional and technically sophisticated recycling companies that can recycle as much as 97% of the battery by weight.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how does that, can you say how that process works?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit about it. Basically, the most mature lithium-ion battery recyclers can actually take battery packs or broken down battery packs into modules depending on the size of the battery. In the case of the Gogoro's battery, which is about as big as a bread box, I would guess, maybe a bit smaller than a bread box, they just put this directly into a furnace. And this furnace can melt down the battery, including all of the precious metals that they want to extract. Actually, there are some companies that do recycling, like Umicore in Belgium. Umicore is a very large supplier of battery materials worldwide. So they will recycle batteries and literally take the remaining materials to turn them into new batteries. They've invested in it because it's in their interest. It's actually more efficient to get that metal out of old batteries than it is to go mine it from the ground.
Well, that's really encouraging. That sounds like that maybe some of the fears about batteries being unsustainable is overhyped.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think it's an easy thing to point out for people who are trying to challenge electric vehicles. It's true that there's not a lot of battery recycling companies out there that do lithium-ion batteries today, but that's basically a result of the fact that there are not many lithium-ion batteries that need to be recycled now. It's a new technology. The first lithium-ion battery was made in 1992 in Japan by Sony. And it took another decade before really any of us saw it in any of our devices. So this has become a technology that's only had really very broad market penetration in the last 10 years. Most of them have not reached the end of their life yet, but that will change.
Do you see a new battery coming in the near future? Because you said that this is kind of older technology for maybe like a millennial mindset.
Sure.
Is there like a new super battery coming that's going to change everything?
There is no super battery, unfortunately. I wish there were, because there's a lot of ways it could be better. But there is very steady incremental progress to make batteries higher capacity, cheaper, safer, and it's happening. And there are a lot of people invested in making this happen. There are probably thousands of PhDs trying to get their theses on this. There's a lot of companies putting in billions of dollars, especially auto companies, to make this happen. The next kind of promising technology in the battery space is what's called a solid state battery. It uses a material, and most batteries use kind of an organic electrolyte, which is this kind of liquid that allows the electric charge to flow in the battery. Replacing that with a solid actually makes the battery much safer. And because solids are denser, it also can help make the battery hold much more energy. But that's still something that's really kind of mostly in the research stage right now.
So you're saying if I drive an electric vehicle, that battery has a little bit of battery juice, literally juice.
There is literally juice. It's not like a liquid like a glass of water. It's more like a gel, but yeah, it's got some kind of jello inside your batteries. But what is it again? Is it do not do this at home? What is the acronym you have? Do not open lithium-ion batteries.
DOOLBLIB. DOLIB. Don't lib.
Yeah.
Do not open lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, we're going to take a break. After the break, Daniel will talk about his journey from toys to batteries.
Hey guys, this is Emily again. If you're enjoying the show, please share it with your friends. Play it to your family. Tell us what you think. We want to know what you loved and what you want to hear more of. We are Waste Not, Why Not on Facebook and at Waste Not Pod on Twitter. Help us reach 1,000 listeners. Back to Nature Nate.
Welcome back. We're with Daniel Vickery, the battery man at the electric vehicle company called Gogoro here in Taiwan. In this last section, Daniel talks about going from engineering student to making solar cookers and Einstein toys, to now creating the future in clean transportation. We also hear about his creative job-seeking strategy, which involved sort of stalking the CEO of a company and then telling them about batteries. So, Daniel, did you, when you were a little kid, like when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Really?
Yeah, I did. And now I have a podcast, so it's kind of the same thing. But for you, when you were a kid, when you were thinking, playing in the sandbox, playing with Legos, did you want to make electric scooter charging stations?
Kind of not. I can explain. I mean, I remember being a little kid, really just 5, 6, 7, and I remember the first time seeing a circuit board. It was actually just the circuit board that's kind of peeking out of the bottom of a video game cartridge. We don't have those anymore. But I remember just feeling so excited by the idea that there were all kinds of electrons flying around in there. As a little 5 or 6-year-old kid, it would just make me run with joy. I just couldn't contain myself.
You liked circuit boards and you wanted to be an engineer.
Yeah.
And then you went to college somewhere?
Sure, yeah. So
Where'd you go to college?
I went to MIT. Ever since I was 14 years old, I knew I wanted to go to MIT. And I remember the day when I was 14, I went to this monthly electronics flea market at MIT they hold, where you find all kinds of crusty old guys selling all kinds of basically dumpster reuse electronics, and people are taking these and building something very new out of them, something that's often very creative. There's a lot of artists and designers that are picking through these to make some kind of new creation, and I thought this kind of combination of creativity and technology is what I really want to do. So I knew it from then, and I never thought it would happen, but it did. And at MIT, I honed my electrical engineering skills. I never really quite knew what I was going to build with it, but now I've found something that I think is very meaningful.
So it wasn't necessarily environmental to begin with.
It was never.
You just you were sort of Daniel the Tinkerer. You liked circuit boards and electric toys. And then you went to Hong Kong? Why'd you go to Hong Kong?
Oh, I went to Hong Kong to really learn more about the way things are made. These days, not a lot of stuff, especially at the mass production level, a lot of stuff doesn't get made in the United States anymore. A lot of stuff gets made in South China. So I went to South China to learn more about how things get put together. A lot of times in the US, engineers just make a drawing and send it off to China and then it comes back.
You just bought a ticket and went to South China.
No, well, yes, you had to buy a ticket to get there. I didn't swim.
I mean, how did you find the company there?
Oh, so I had a buddy from MIT who was starting a company working on actually solar thermal energy technology. This is where instead of using a solar panel to convert sunlight to electricity, you're using basically a mirror to shine sunlight on something you want to heat up.
Like magnifying glass, killing ants.
Exactly.
But for food.
But for food, or you can use it to generate steam or anything you want, right? I found my way from there. I did a lot of freelance and consulting work, helping people get stuff made in South China. I worked for robotics company. I worked with motorcycle, actually also a battery company. And I worked on some toys.
You were a toy maker.
Yes, I have been a toy maker. I also did some toy research at MIT, but yeah.
Is it a toy we would know? Like, what toy did you make? What kind of toy was this?
We worked on a toy called, it was like a little Einstein robot.
Okay.
Yeah. And it could tell you some like funny Einstein jokes or answer some questions using some simple AI. Yeah.
And so you were making this toy, and then one day you went to the factory and saw.
It was really in that process of visiting lots and lots of factories in South China and seeing not just the stuff I was making, but all the other things being made at these factories. Everything from bicycles, security cameras, who knows, right? Toys. I really realized kind of the scale of how much we build and how much we throw away. And just, I felt like I really needed to be very careful in my choice of where I directed my skills and my efforts in my career as an engineer, as someone who builds things. I really wanted to make sure that what I built had tangible, meaningful value, that it wouldn't end up in the landfill of humanity, or at least not too soon.
Landfill of Humanity is going to be the follow-up podcast to this one.
Oh, fantastic.
So you decided you want to make a transition in your career. How did you actually go about doing that, though? Because you said you wanted to start to make green environmental products that benefited people's lives.
Well, I can tell you my story, and everyone's story has an aspect of chance. But if you are an engineer and you want to find, in the US, you want to find a career where you can make a big impact on environment or climate change, my best advice would be to look at anything that is being invested in by ARPA-E. ARPA-E is basically the one and only government fund in the US for, hey, I have a crazy idea about how to solve our energy problems. Can you give me some money to go and try it out? And they're pretty selective because there's not a lot of money there, and the companies they choose tend to be very cool. But for me, I was looking for something in Taiwan already, and I was looking at everything I could find. And at the time, Gogoro was in stealth mode, meaning they had no public kind of information. But I looked at some of the patents they had filed, and I saw that they were about transportation, which we know this is important for energy. And I also saw they had some stuff around batteries and around energy distribution itself. And I didn't completely understand what they were building, but I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. That's it. This is the one. And I also saw they had raised a lot of money. So someone believes in it.
What did you see in the patent?
When I first found out about the company, they were totally in stealth mode, so there was not really any public information, just the patents. But then a few months later, they made their kind of debut. It was at CES in January 2015 in Las Vegas, and they announced the system, electric scooter, and a new way of swapping batteries to fuel it. And they opened their very first store in Taipei, at Taipei 101, which is this big, tall building in the center of Taipei, in March that year. And actually, I had sent in a lot of resumes. I had got a LinkedIn professional account and tried to message their recruiters. I'd sent emails. I had even created accounts on the local job site, all in Chinese, and really I got nothing. No responses, no interest. It was very depressing, actually. But when they opened that first store, I said, I'm going to go because I think it's cool. And so I went down there and I brought along my girlfriend, maybe a little less interested than me. I started explaining to her about the battery. Oh, it's an 18650 battery. This is the one used in the Tesla pack. It has high energy density. Yeah. And some guy came over and he was like, oh, it seems like you know a lot about batteries. And we kind of talked a little bit, and I asked, I was like, so what do you do here? You know, are you a sales guy in the store? And he was like, no, I'm the CEO. And I was like, oh damn. And then I peed my pants. And then you know, we shook hands, and after that, it was smooth sailing from there, you know. I got an interview, did a couple interviews, and then I got started later that year.
So the lesson here is don't take no, or don't take no response for an answer.
They often say play in traffic. I mean, I wasn't trying to go to the store specifically to get a job, but, you know, yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to find the right guy. I'm very fortunate.
Well, it worked out, and you've stayed. Now you've been with Gogoro for several iterations of the charging station, right?
To be honest, when I first got there, they didn't know what to do with this kind of foreigner at Gogoro, and so they didn't give me a project. They gave me a desk and a computer, and they said, welcome to Gogoro, here's your desk. And for the first few days, it was kind of tough. Actually, for the first couple of weeks, I thought, I'm going to be fired, I'm not going to make it. But yeah, to be honest, it was an opportunity to find my own project. And one of the first things I noticed is that at the time, we only charged the battery with kind of a fixed power. It would always take a certain amount of time to charge the battery. And I realized that if we were smart about it, we could charge the battery faster or slower according to the demand from the users. If there's a lot of people that need to swap, we can charge really fast, make sure there's more batteries ready for them. If there's not so many, we can charge slower, and we can control it all from a centralized server that knows, you know, based on lots of data about when people might need to get a battery. And so I started to build up a spec for that. I mean, I didn't do it all myself, but you know, I started to build up a team within Gogoro to work on that, and I wrote some specs and got the project started. Yeah.
What was your biggest achievement, or what's the thing you're most proud of working on for Gogoro?
What I can say is the thing that really makes me most proud is that when I started at Gogoro, there were no Gogoro scooters on the road. It was before we had sold a single model. But today I can walk around, and on every street corner, basically, I can see a Gogoro. So I have seen how the city transforms with this work. And that is so rewarding, beyond my expectation. I can't even say.
Does that make you optimistic about the future of electric vehicles or about the environment?
I mean, there's a lot to be optimistic about. There are also some things to be concerned about. What I'm doing is still one tiny, tiny piece of the big challenge we have to solve climate change and other environmental challenges. But I do think I can rest easy feeling that I am making the best use of the skills that come naturally to me. And I do think that one kind of optimistic thing that I like is that every year a bunch of Gogoro riders will gather and ride as a group through the streets of Taipei. And this will be thousands and thousands of people. And I feel like it's a chance to kind of get a glimpse of what a future city can look like. One that's clean, there's no exhaust, it's quiet, and it's beautiful. Don't you laugh, Nature Nate. This is my life.
I'm just enjoying your excitement and your optimism.
So it's cool not just to solve the environmental challenge, but also to reimagine a city and the city infrastructure. I would love to live in a quieter Taipei. I'd love to live in a cleaner Taipei with less air pollution. But climate change is probably the biggest, scariest, and most important challenge of all. Yeah.
What would you say to people who want to transition into a green career, or maybe they want to take what they're doing already and transition to become more environmental?
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say, and of course, depending on your skill set, you might have different areas you can contribute, but a lot of people, when they feel like they want to do something for the environment, they think a lot directly about the things they associate with greenness. They think about, solar panels or wind turbines or recycling. And those things are all important things to work on, but there's also the stuff around those things. There's a lot of stuff around these things that don't get as much attention, but are just as important, like the power converters for the solar panels or the chargers for the batteries. I'm speaking more from an electrical engineering hardware perspective, but there's a lot of other pieces, or maybe there's tools that we need. You might even say that designing better ways of manipulating data or programming languages for engineers could presumably be something that could help if it really assists the people who are solving the problem. So there's a lot of ways to attack it. So rather than go straight towards Solar City or Tesla or whoever is doing the very kind of public thing, I think the best thing to do is look for the thing that matches your skills and interests so that you can really, you can bring your whole heart to your work. And as long as it's somehow connected to the big picture, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of stuff around the things.
So you're saying you don't need to be the heroic person installing the solar panel, or the forest ranger preventing the illegal logging.
Absolutely.
There's the guy or the woman, making a better way to manage that forest, or maybe they're doing, maybe they're building the tiny screws that you use in that solar panel to connect it to the roof.
Absolutely. There's a million examples here of people who are working behind the scenes, not for the wind turbine company, but for the company that sells parts to the wind turbine company, or the company that sells parts to the company that sells parts to the wind turbine company. And it's all meaningful and it's all important. Everyone has a role to play here. It's a big challenge. There's no hero here. We all need to participate.
So Daniel, you found the Infinity Gauntlet. You have unlimited resources. What would you do to make the world a better place?
As an engineer, there's only so much I can do to address the problem. And the world is not going to engineer this problem away. I really want to emphasize this. A lot of people might feel like, ooh, climate change is scary, but the scientists are pretty good. They will weasel a way out of this for us. But I have to just say, no, we will not. We cannot. We don't know how. It's not possible. And so there have to be really policy and political solutions to this as well. The world needs to change. We need to change the way our economies work, the way our behaviors work. If I was given infinite resources, it might be put to these kinds of things, not necessarily
lobbying.
I'm not going to be specific here because this is not my field of expertise. I'm an engineer and I'm really good at designing circuits, so I use that to try to make a difference. And what do I do as a technologist is I provide options to the policymakers. I give them better ways to solve the problem. But I don't make the decision for them. That decision still needs to be made. No matter how great my battery is, as long as people are not going to emphasize this as a policy position, it will make no difference. Yeah.
What would you build next for electric vehicles? What's the next thing to advance the industry?
Actually, just like Gogoro makes a really big difference by adding some new infrastructure, I think what's needed for electric vehicles is infrastructural improvements. All the automotive companies, whether it's BMW or Volvo or GM or even Tesla, maybe Tesla's even a bit of an exception here, but most of them, they don't really want to get too involved in the charging stations. That's not their core business. They're hoping someone else is going to take care of that. Infrastructure is a whole nother game compared to mass producing a product and selling it to people. And so as we have more and more electric vehicles consuming energy from the electric grid is going to need to find ways to evolve to accommodate those. We're going to have much bigger power draws at some particular times than we might otherwise have at other times. So if I were going to dig into something next, it would be how can we evolve our infrastructure to fit electric cars. Electric scooters, I'm a big believer in battery swap. For electric cars, it might be harder, and we need to figure out what the answer is.
So is that kind of relating to the smart grid? If we have like a more internet-connected electricity distribution network? Or?
Yeah. What you might hear sometimes in the industry is the acronym V2G, which means vehicle to grid.
Never heard that before, but
Never heard, Nature Nate. Okay. V2G means vehicle to grid, and so actually there's a lot of opportunity for us to use our electric vehicles to support the grid. Instead of being a burden, we can provide kind of a distributed network of batteries. Electric vehicles are basically like big mobile batteries that can supply power back to the grid when needed. The smart grid comes in here in terms of being able to make good ad hoc decisions about when to draw out power from these batteries or when not to. Yeah.
All right, Daniel, thank you for coming into my cool clubhouse to talk about electric vehicles, batteries, your work experience at Gogoro. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with?
Well, thanks a lot, Nate, for inviting me. I think electric vehicles as a whole, they're absolutely necessary for our transformation to clean transportation. But the best thing you can do is try to avoid needing to drive at all. If you can ride a bike or maybe ride a scooter or walk or take public transportation, ultimately, most cases, you're going to be using a lot less energy than if you take this 2-ton piece of metal with you wherever you go. So if you have to buy another vehicle, make sure it's electric.
Waste not your time on buying electric vehicles needlessly. Why not walk around? Thanks for coming on the show, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Till next time, Nature Nate.
I'm Nature Nate, and this has been the Waste Not, Why Not podcast, recorded at the Future Ward co-working space in Taipei, Taiwan. Do you have a question for us? Email your voice recording to ask@wastenotwhynot.com. Subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever. Give us a good rating. Hit us up on social media. We are Waste Not Why Not on Facebook and Waste Not Pod on Twitter. We post memes now. This has been a Ghost Island Media production, recorded on a Yeti microphone provided by Blue. This episode is produced, written, and edited by Emily Y. Wu and myself, Nature Nate. Original theme song by Chris Lowe. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.